Hi, I'm Anne, and today I have for you block 11 of 12 in the Traditional Quilt Block Series, and this week's block is the rail fence. I have put together the 9-inch version and the 3-inch version, which is FPP again this week, and the pattern is linked in the description below for this block and for the 10 before it. And I'm going to sit down and put together the 6-inch, so I'll see you at the machine. Okay, so I've got my pattern and my fabric is cut out according to the pattern. And for this week's block, we're going to be utilizing 3 long strips, and we'll be cutting them down after we sew them together. Really speeds up this process. And I did want to mention on page 2 of the pattern is the 3-inch FPP version. I color coded this because I had to redo this about 5 times. This thing was so easy to get confused on. And you know, with FPP, your pattern lines are on the top, but you're attaching your fabric, at least in my method, to the back facing the other direction. So it was so easy to get these confused. The only way I could finish this thing properly was after I color coded it. So I hope this helps you if you're doing that 3-inch FPP version. Okay, so let me hold up the illustration that shows you the numbers that correspond with the measurements you see on your screen. Go ahead and pause or do whatever you need to get those measurements, or you can go to the link below and just sign up and get the pattern for free. So the first step in putting together the rail fence block, since we're doing it from one long strip set, is we're just going to sew these 3 pieces together. And what you need to do when you're making this block is just really focus on a very accurate 1/4 inch seam, and at the very least sew very straight. And it's a good exercise. So we're going to take, for me, this is fabric number 1, and we're going to take piece number 2 and put them right sides together, and we're going to sew a very accurate scant 1/4 inch seam. And so what you can do is sew your seam a bit more scant and then trim these 2 down once you get them done. But it's still really important, even if you do it that way, that you sew very straight and consistently, whatever size seam you do. I've given you no extra fabric in the width here, but in the length of this strip, there is a 1/2 inch extra for you. I found that I needed it, so yeah. So I've got my stitch length at about a 1.8 as per usual, and I might go to a 1.7. One thing about strip sets that I found is since you cut them apart, where your cuts are, the seams can come open much more easily. So if you normally use a stitch length of a 2 or more, I would go down a bit for a strip set. It'll make your life easier. Okay. I'm just going to take my time and just try to really keep things going straight here. Okay, over to the iron. So I'm going to set my seam. And I'm just going to press this to what I consider to be the darkest one. And since my 3rd strip is going to be white, I will be pressing the same direction away from the white when I come back here after sewing that 2nd seam. So, okay, so I'm going to give this a quick measure and just make sure I'm not off or All right, so either I cut my fabric a little wider than I meant to, or I sewed my seam a little more scant than I meant to. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this. This is a really good time to check yourself. So the seam should be, for the 6-inch block, should be at 1¼ inches, and that's what I'm lining up here. Okay. And so making sure that I put this third strip on the correct side of my unit here. I almost put it on the wrong side, but probably would have just changed my design rather than ripping it out. Okay. I'm going to fatten my seam up a little bit. Apparently I'm a little scant today. All right, back to the iron. Okay, another measurement here. So at this point, we should have a 3½ inch wide strip set. Looks pretty close, close enough. So at this point, we want to subcut our strip sets down to the block size we need. And for us on the 6-inch, we are trimming these down to 3½ inch squares. For the 9-inch block, those would have been 5-inch squares. So 3½ inch is what we're doing. And I did leave a little margin for error on the length of the strip set. So I'm going to go ahead and straighten up the edge there. And then we need 3½ inch squares. And that's our leftover. Back to the machine. So this is the way I wanted to lay mine out. And this is the way I would do it for a standalone block like what we're doing here. And I'll sew these two together and then the rows together. However, if I was doing this where I was making these blocks for an entire quilt, I would instead lay them out where the blocks were rotated like this. As just one block, this looks a little odd. But when you put these all together, as I'll show you on the screen, you get a zigzag effect across the whole quilt, and it's actually really cool. This first one has 3 strips, kind of like what we have going on here. And the second one has 4 strips, and you can see it really does create quite a different effect overall. I'm going to increase my stitch length back up since we're not doing strip sets anymore. And then take a look at the one with 5 strips. Look at how the effect makes it look woven, but it's not put together any differently. The colors are just intentionally placed. Dark, light, dark, light, dark. And the effect in the end is a woven effect. It's pretty cool. So yeah, this is this block I've always, kind of shied away from, I guess, but I've learned a lot doing this series about all sorts of different blocks, and this and the log cabin and the Jacob's ladder are 3 extremely flexible blocks when it comes to being able to come up with completely different effects depending on which way you turn the blocks in the end. Okay, so at this point, we're going to want to go to the iron and press them opposite directions so we can nest. Set this seam. This one I'm going to go ahead and press to the dark. And then I'm going to do the same with the bottom row. All right, so this is how they're going to go together, and we should be able to just lock them into place, nesting that up real nice. I can feel it's in place. I don't even need to check it. Okay, back to the iron. Now you can press this open, which is actually what I went to do when I first made this block. But I found that there's only a small part of this that wants to press open. At least for me, I'm probably completely doing this wrong, but I like to just kind of see how the fabric wants to go. And for me, this is how it wants to go. And what I do is just kind of open this seam up a little. You can see that stitch came apart. The seam will still be locked into place by the seam that went over the top of it there. So we're fine there. I'm going to go ahead though and give it a hit of Mary Ellen's. And I'll lay the clappers on this for a little bit. Very good. All right, so I'm going to check this for size. Okay, beautiful. So now I'm going to grab 2 pieces of sashing and a cornerstone and finish this up. I think I'll attach it here first. Linked in the description below is actually the quilt layout instructions in addition to the pattern. And the quilt layout is going to give you this 6-inch blocks are going to make a baby quilt. So there's a link to that so that you can get all the information for the sashing and the cornerstones. And then also linked in the description below is the quilt layout for the throw size, which is what we're making with the 9-inch blocks. All right, go back to the iron and going to press this away from the block. All right. And so now I'm going to attach the cornerstone to the other piece of sashing. Over to the iron, and we're going to press this again toward the sashing away from the cornerstone. And that will allow us to nest this with the block and the sashing piece we just finished. All right, back to the iron. There you go, all done. Just one more. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week for the final block.